welcome to Old Man Energy. I'm your host, Flint Anderson. And if this is your first time with us, thank you for joining us. You guys are in for a treat today. And if you've come back to more of my craziness and insanity, well, thank you very much. If you're not already subscribed to us on all of the socials, make sure you hit like and subscribe. Go to TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. We got different content daily on all the platforms. Today, we have a guest with us, is Erica Humbert, who is a doctor, nurse practitioner, specializing in optimizing your life and your health through a total, would you call it a total body approach?
Yeah, okay. I would. Yeah, mind-body approach.
Awesome. Her bio is quite impressive, actually. We're happy to have her here today. Erica is a family practice nurse practitioner with 10 years of experience as a primary care NP, and previous to that, had 10 years of experience in nursing. She's a veteran, serving 5 years as a Navy nurse. She started her own practice because she wants to take more time with each patient to fully address the root causes of most common problems she sees and go beyond disease treatment to fully optimizing health and well-being for each client. She specializes in custom plans and treatment for common problems like weight gain, fatigue, and mood disorders. She is passionate about hormone replacement therapy in men and women and helping patients lose weight with total mind-body approach and incorporating weight loss medication where appropriate. She believes vitamins, supplements, and natural alternative therapies in addition to medications when needed. Her favorite moments are when she sees a client implement simple changes and sees big results. That's a pretty impressive bio.
Thanks.
Very comprehensive.
Yes.
I'm not sure I could have written it quite that detailed, but that's awesome. So you want to expand on that a little bit? Tell us some more about your work or any of your relevant accomplishments.
Yeah, I mean, I've found throughout my years of nursing and even as a nurse practitioner, the traditional model is just to see like 18 to 20 patients a day. And there's just this pressure. There's this time pressure. There's this pressure for a quick fix. And I love what I was doing, but there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to do this. So I kind of envisioned this idea of having my own practice where I could spend a lot more time and just really get to the root cause. I kept hearing the same things over and over. I'm exhausted. I'm gaining weight. I'm eating less. I'm working out more. It's not working for me. What do I need to do? And in the regular primary care world, I just wasn't able to fully address that. So like coming up with my own model really helped me feel like I was doing a better job. And then it helped my patients do a whole lot better too. So I'm just kind of like, I feel like I'm building off of what I already know, like a platform that I've already sort of established in that regular primary care world. It kind of set me up for this next big thing for me.
Awesome. What do you think is the biggest difference? You say what you couldn't get into in regular primary care. How much time is allotted in a and we all know the answer to this, but how allotted in a regular doctor's office from the top side? I mean, we know that we sit in the patient room and wait for an hour or two sometimes, and then we're seen for 10 minutes and maybe get some of our stuff addressed. So from the other side, what were you required to do and what makes your practice different?
So in the past, in a traditional primary care practice, I mean, I was lucky the primary care I worked in for 10 years, I would see 18 to 20 a day, but your traditional primary care practice sees 20 to 24 patients a day. Specialty practices might be even more. It might be 24 to 26. So the person's waiting in the exam room for that time because there's the primary care provider or the provider gets backed up. But I would see 18 a day. So that was 10 to 15, maybe if I was lucky, 20 minutes a visit. So if I had somebody that needed a little more time than that, it would just back up my time for everybody else. And I would feel this constant pressure of that time. So even if I heard something the person said that I was like, man, there's so much I got to tell you right now, but I know I don't have time for it. So I got to tell you like a quick soundbite and we got to move on. And then the patients get used to that model that you're talking about too. So they're just kind of like, I already know I only got 10 minutes. I already know you're going to just hand me a script and move on. Like they have low expectations. And it's almost like in some situations you're set up for failure. In a situation of I have a cough, cold, and need an antibiotic, works pretty well. In a situation of I'm depressed, exhausted, and something is seriously wrong, it doesn't work very well at all.
We call that better living through chemistry.
Yeah, exactly. There's immense pressure to just prescribe a medication because that's like the quickest thing you could do.
Well, and so many people in today's society are on amazing amounts of medication and not realizing their interactions with each other. Or from a personal standpoint, my old primary care, probably if he had been able, and I don't know what he was required or not required to say or do, but if he'd looked at me and said, you drink too much and you're 60 pounds overweight, if you would address those two things, you probably wouldn't need to take half the stuff you're taking. But he never looked at me and said that. I came to that conclusion on my own. So now, am I mad at him for that? I was a little mad at him for that because he should have said something. But if he's just focused on that production level and he has only 10 or 15 minutes, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So,
well, I think you're a particularly impressive and direct person. And I've had patients tell me that a doctor did say something just like that to them and they were not receptive. They were like, I fired that doctor. I'll never see him again. He just told me I'm fat. I need to lose weight and I need all this stuff. So I'm done with it. And I'm like, he was trying to help you, like,
I guess that's reading the room.
Yeah.
So is that why you started your own practice? And what makes your practice different than that day-to-day production level office, for lack of a better term?
Well, I take less patients. So I see one patient like every hour. So in the follow-up's 30 minutes to an hour. So that way I can take all the time to address everything that person needs. So I don't need a giant amount of volume. And I don't fall under the insurance-based model. The insurance-based model sets us up for failure a lot. So I operate on cash and cards and then take that full time. And then we can just address everything. We can and I can get all the labs that I want. Insurance dictates what labs you can and can't get based on what they will and won't pay for. And that is really limiting. If you find out that I've had people come to me and they were diagnosed with depression, but they had a testosterone deficiency. We're not checking testosterone in primary care because we don't know if the insurance is going to pay for the test or the treatment. And we get discouraged by that. So I just take a lot more time. I find out everything I need to know. I'd rather lay it all out, what all is going on. And then we can still address it step by step, or we can address it all at once if I have a highly motivated person. But I'm looking at the entire picture because I can take the time to do that. And I'm asking patients, not just like, what are you here for? But what is your sleep pattern like? What is your mood pattern like? What does your nutrition look like? What does your exercise regimen look like? Those things are completely inextricable with what's wrong. They're inseparable. So you got to know all that information to make the right diagnosis.
And that's impossible to get in 15 minutes.
It's impossible. Yeah. And I mean, I'm used to, I think I need to make people comfortable, and I am able to do that in that hour. Because before in primary care, if I was just asking people even anything about their nutrition, they weren't telling me the truth. And even now it's hard to get the truth out of them. But I mean, at least if they're sitting with me for an hour and I'm getting their buy-in and they trust me, then they'll be a little bit more honest about it.
Listen, folks, never lie to your doctor, your lawyer, or your banker.
Don't do it. We're not judging you. I promise. I promise you, we're not judging you. We've heard it before, and we want to help you. We're not judging you.
And I preach. I talk a lot about having a good team around you and surrounding yourself with people smarter than you. And realistically, you don't ever think about to include your doctor in that, but you really should, because you are your own machine. And in order to be able to produce at an optimal level, you have to be operating at an optimal level. Now, obviously, that requires your own personal participation in it.
Absolutely.
But you also need a doctor who's online and on board with your goals and who actually will help you. You hit on a very, very personal note for me when you talked about being diagnosed with depression and it was just being low testosterone. That was me specifically. I was a whiny little bitch. When I didn't realize what was wrong with me, and the doctor looked and looked, we finally figured it out, but it took a long time. Whereas if they had looked for that on the front side, I think I would have eliminated some medication and a lot of time. You have some questions down here you wanted me to ask, but you covered several of them, like about you touched base on the labs and the insurance company, and the insurance companies really rule the world. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in right now. They dictate construction industry. They dictate how you do things, when you do things. You have 3 or 4 different kinds of insurance that you have to maintain, even though you're not a slave to our insurance company. But if we don't have it, then we need major medical care. Then we're bankrupt.
Right.
And sometimes we're bankrupt anyway because they don't pay for it. So operating outside of that, is it difficult to operate outside of that model on your end? Because I'm not a patient of yours, but I do know patients of yours. So I understand what you're saying. Is it difficult for you to operate outside of that model, or it's like more of a blended model because you're not opposed to insurance?
No, I'm not opposed to it. And it's more of a blended model. I kind of see myself as outside that model. And if a patient really needs to see a specialist or they need a special test done and they need their insurance, I don't mind them having it. But it's actually easier for me to operate outside that model because I can get all the labs that I want. I can take all the time that I want. I don't have to spend my time checking off insurance check boxes, which is a lot of other stuff that I was doing, a lot of administrative red tape stuff I was doing in primary care. I can spend that time on the patient. And, a lot of people don't realize, like in primary care under insurance, we spend a lot of time looking for problems, right? Like getting our mammograms done and getting our screenings done. There's nothing wrong with that. But our immune system is designed to hunt for cancer cells and kill them. How about optimizing our system so that we don't get cancer? Like that's kind of the way I'm thinking, like get your vitamin levels, energy levels right, get your hormone levels balanced. Let's work on your lifestyle so that you don't develop some of the health problems.
Let me ask you a question about hormones specifically, because as a layperson, we hear hormones. What does that mean? Because in my mind, that puts me in thought, when I was younger, it put me in thought of grandma, or it put me in thought of menopause, because that's really the only time that we hear hormones mentioned as a general rule. So can you explain their importance and why it's important for men and women to have that level looked at?
That's a good question. So hormones are dynamic. They are involved in every single process in the body. The way I like to explain them is that hormones are like chemical messengers. They run around our body, turning certain things on and off. And there are like 50 different types of hormones in the human body, and they're operating from birth to the end of life. So when we talk about balancing hormones, some hormones, like for example, cortisol, is a stress hormone, when it's too high, it causes problems. Certain hormones, when they're low, like testosterone and estrogen and progesterone, cause problems. But testosterone's present in men and women. So most hormones that we hear about, like we assign a gender to them, like testosterone is just for men and estrogen is just for women. Men have estrogen too. And if men have too high of an estrogen level, that's not good. And that can come from overweight. It can come from stress. It can actually come from testosterone replacement therapy. And if so, we got to balance it by giving them an estrogen blocker. So I'm kind of giving you a lot of roundabout complicated answer because it's a really complex question. But basically, hormone assessment is something that kind of needs to be done in every age and stage of life, and making sure that all the hormones are in their right optimal levels, but especially in midlife. So as early as your mid 30s to late 30s, in some people, not everybody, but in some people, our hormone levels start to drop. That's predominantly estrogen and progesterone in women, and predominantly testosterone in men. If you think about, for example, the range of time when girls and women start their periods, it could be as young as 9, it could be as old as 17. Same thing when we talk about midlife. Hormone levels can drop as young as mid 30s or even later, but in midlife, they're typically going to start dropping in everyone. And there's ways to boost them that involve our lifestyle, right? Like exercise and eating healthy. But sometimes, no matter what, it's still dropping and it can be supplemented. I mean, I've heard people say like, oh, well, you shouldn't supplement those hormones because that's not natural. It is natural for those hormones to be in balance. We live 3 times longer than we used to live. And is it natural to pull a tooth without Novocaine? Yeah, but we have the technology now to do that. So why suffer? Why?
That's a great analogy.
It really is. It's like, yes, women suffer through menopause. I've had so many women tell me that doctors just told them, well, you're in menopause, get over it, just suffer. Why? We have the technology and we have to naturally and safely boost those hormone levels so that women don't have to suffer through menopause. So I'm all for doing it. The risks are overblown. The rewards are really high. And it's the same thing in men. And I really feel for men, like your story, because women, their hormones are talked about a lot. Everyone equates hormones to women, but men have hormones too. And it's just as important to have them balanced and optimized and treated, just like treatment for anything,
That's a great answer. That's a great answer. And my wife is a patient of hers. So Des has been seeing her she's a fairly new patient. I have purposely not become a patient because I wanted to have a very candid discussion here. And I didn't want you to be prevented to talk about anything that I've told you already or anything that I do talk about here. So anything that I've told you is free game. Share out here. That's not a problem. And we're going to talk about that more later in the podcast because I think there really is a huge stigma. It's one thing for women when they hit menopause to go and get hormone therapy, which is why we know what it is. There's a huge stigma for men to go. Plus, then you get a man who is typically a little more ego-driven, or I'm supposed to be a really strong dude, having to admit, you know what, I don't feel like I should. I need to go talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Go talk to typically a male doctor for a guy. Well, he's in a production level medicine. He may or may not help.
Right.
He may or may not listen, or you may or may could just get the minimum, which I definitely want to touch base on, but that's a very, very pointed answer. And when you're talking to your patients, that brings up an interesting question. When you're talking to the patients, aside from them lying to you, What are the biggest problems that you find whenever you're talking to them?
There's a lot of fear, like what you talked about. Sometimes they're afraid to bring certain things up. Sometimes they don't know what they just know I don't feel right, but they don't know how to describe it. So it really takes me asking the right questions to kind of pull it out of them. You asked specifically what barriers males face?
No, not specifically. Just what
Biggest-
what are the biggest challenges you hear from your patients in your practice?
Yeah, the biggest challenges are just getting them to trust me too. I mean, I really, the maddest I get is when I hear stories about people being mistreated by medical providers. I mean, it's like we're supposed to be helping people. That's what our job is. So when I hear about and I've heard stories about medical providers mistreating patients, I hate that. So they kind of come to me sometimes with they've been mistreated, so they're cautious about telling me certain things, and I can see that. So just knowing that I'm not judging them too. I think there's a very old model of seeing a person in a lab coat or a doctor or whatever as an authority figure. So it's like I've had patients say to me, "Well, you're probably going to be mad at me, or you're probably going to yell at me." I'm like, "Why would I be mad at you? It's your body." Like, really, I see providers as a collaborative consultant. It's my job to tell you what I think you should do based on my medical expertise. What you do when you leave the room, I'm not responsible for. So I'm not going to be mad at you if you come back and tell me, well, I wasn't able to do that. And I'm here to help you figure out how. And I really see the person as the expert on their life. So that they're the expert on what they're going to be able to do. And I'm the expert on the medicine. And our job is to forge something together. But that's a new model, that collaborative model. Not everybody has seen that done. Not everybody understands that. So really getting people to collaborate with me, trust me, tell me the truth, and to be able to talk about some really tough stuff. I'm a stranger sometimes when a patient's new. So they got to tell me, like, I have to ask them, like, have you been through something traumatic when you were young? I mean, that's not an easy question for anybody to answer at all, let alone a stranger. So there's some of the hurdles that I face, but it's really rewarding work, because when somebody opens up to me and tells me something that they weren't able to talk about with anybody else, I feel that trust and that confidence. And it's like, it's hugely rewarding, because when I hear certain things that I know I can help with, I'm like, I jump in there. I'm like, I know I can help. And that feels really good. And because I've seen it work in someone else before. And when I see the person come back and they're grateful, they're happy, they're doing better, it's like the reason why I got into doing what I do. That's really rewarding for me. So there's a little something in it for me too.
Well, we don't show up to work for the practice.
Right.
We have to like what we're doing, and we want to make money doing it. So that makes sense. 2 questions. And you actually provided these questions to me. So they sound like bomb questions, though, because they're really good questions.
Oh, good.
This last one. Okay. So now you've given us a good background. Lots of practices promise the world.
Right.
They promise you, oh, here, you do this and you're 15. And this goes for influencers and fitness gurus and personal trainers and whatever. But they practice weight loss, or they promise weight loss. They promise a relevant or a revolutionary new approach or whatever. What makes you different? Why should the audience believe you?
So I don't believe in a one size fits all anything. Everybody's body is different. Everybody has different effects to any medication or any treatment plan, whether it's not non-medication. And everybody's life background that they bring to me is different. So my idea is customizing medical care and wellness care. And I kind of bring that modern medicine approach to like modern medicine, a blend of that and alternative medicine, and a blend of that mind body. So a lot of practitioners practice nutrition or exercise therapy. And there's nothing wrong with those approaches. But I kind of have a little bit of everything. I understand exercise, I understand nutrition, and I can write medication if medication is indicated. Some people need medication for certain things. There's no getting around it. And I can do that, or I can do that along with what I'm doing. So for example, starting a weight loss medication while we're getting someone into an exercise and fitness regimen, and then we can get them off of it at the right time. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm a blend of all different approaches, and I'm very open to that customizable aspect. Whereas I've had patients tell me they buy into a program or a provider, and if they don't follow step X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C, then they're out, or it's not going to work. It's not so for me. Someone can come back and see me and tell me what worked and what didn't for them, and we can continually adjust that plan until we get to the goal. There's multiple ways to get to one goal, and I kind of see it that way. I'm not like one way or the highway type provider.
That's That sets you aside. That's very good. So is there one magic pill you can take where you'll wake up fit and in shape with no exercise and no lifestyle alterations? Is there a magic pill like that?
I totally wish there was. And if there was, I would be so rich. You would be surprised how many times I get asked that. Do you have any medicine where, look, I don't have time for to go to the gym and I'm really not going to change my diet. So do you have a medicine you could just give me and I'll just drop weight and feel better? And I'm like, don't you think that would be on every billboard? Don't you think everyone on the planet would be? We're the richest country in the world. That does not exist. But I will say there are treatments that are bona fide work, things that can absolutely help if you're willing to show up, tell the truth, be honest, take the time it requires, and then get a customized plan for you and then follow that plan too. Because I can give someone a plan all day long. Some people implement that plan, some don't. The people that implement it and come back and then give me feedback and we tweak it, they do fantastic. And then some don't, and they either don't come back or they come back and like, yeah, I didn't change anything. So I'm like, okay, I ain't mad at you. But what happened? Well, nothing changed. If nothing changes, then nothing changes. As my mom likes to say.
If you want to change some things in your life, you have to change some things in your life.
Right.
What's your favorite kind of patient to see?
Oh man, my favorite kind of patient to see is somebody who is not just wanting change, but deciding to change, right? So and I shouldn't say everybody, but most people want to lose weight. They want to look better. They want to feel better, but they haven't made that decision to change. So they kind of show up and toss problems in my lap and they want a quick fix. They want an easy solution. There are a lot of people out there, like you said, promising big quick fixes and easy solutions. I'm not mad at them, but that's not my favorite person to see. My favorite person to see is somebody who is willing to make changes. They realize it's not going to be overnight, and they're very open to what I have to say. And they're very, very willing to have a dialogue with me and just tell me everything they're thinking and feeling. Even if somebody doesn't like what I'm saying, I don't mind. If you tell me that, all right, what don't you like about what I'm saying? How can I communicate it better? So I like somebody who's a good communicator, very willing to change, very open to what I have to offer them. And they're bought in, they're committed to a plan. And I've been lucky enough that I've had a lot of patients like that. And it's just been like a really exciting journey because the person that comes in willing to spend their own money versus their insurance company's money, and they're willing to take an hour with me versus in and out of the doctor in 15 minutes, a lot of times happens to be the ideal patient. They're really listening to what I have to say and they're really ready to implement it because they didn't just come there just because they had a free visit on their plan and showing up once a year, So it's good for me and it's good for them.
We just got those notifications from our insurance company.
Right. And insurance people just show up.
Doctor.
Yeah. They're just like, I'm here. It's free. I'm here for 15 minutes. I'm going back to work and I'm only half listening to what you have to say. I've seen those people. I'm like, you're wasting your time and mine. What are you doing?
So your approach to medicine, from what you've explained here, is an approach, and this may or may not be entirely accurate, but more of an Eastern approach to medicine, which is, okay, let's keep the patient well.
Yes.
And if you get ill, I'm not doing my job. As opposed to come see me when you're ill and we'll try and make you well.
Right. And I would say, just tacking on that philosophy, and this might be an Eastern philosophy or not, I haven't studied it at length, but it's like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's like if you come early on before something becomes, and some people wait to go to the doctor until they're absolutely desperate, in pain or whatever it is. Come early. Come when that thing is first starting out. And it's not to say it's wrong to come to your doctor when you're in pain, but the earlier the better, or the sooner the better, you can get well at any age or at any stage, but the sooner the better. So yeah, I like to see people early on and enact the plan early and stay well versus breaking down. That's true. Like if somebody's just really doing poorly, I'm probably not doing my job and they're probably not doing theirs. But I like to see them and prevent the problem before it becomes a much bigger problem. It's just an uphill battle. Then it's a lot harder to tackle that problem. It's gotten really bad.
That makes sense. And just to clarify, whenever you see patients, there's different types of visit. You
Right.
don't spend an hour with every patient. If one of your patients comes to you and says, look, I've got a sinus infection, I've got a cold.
Right.
You're not going to make them sit in the lobby for an hour and then sit there with them for an hour. You're going to be like, okay, I know your history. Take it. So that's a different type of visit. And that's not what we're talking about here. If you're sick, guys, go to the doctor and get some help. What she's talking about is overall general health. And we've left something out here, and I want to ask you about it. But where do you think mental health plays into this as well. Do you touch base on that with your patients, or
Yeah.
how do you handle that? And obviously, I'm not asking you to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but it's been my experience that that is a huge portion of overall wellness and health and fitness.
100%. So mental health is completely inextricable from physical health. I don't approach any of my patients without asking detailed questions about their mental health. And it's one of my passions, actually. So I do function a lot. I'm not trained as a therapist, but I've had to pick up a lot of those tools over the years, because I would say it's rare that someone comes to me with weight gain. And my main things I treat are overweight, issues with weight, anxiety or mood problems, and fatigue. And I can treat anything, but those are my main things that I'm treating in my practice. And people rarely come to me with those issues, and they're simply a physical issue. As we get talking, there's some kind of underlying mental issue underneath. And I love dealing with that, because shifts in mindset, as you know, this is what your philosophy is all about. Shifts in mindset create huge changes in health and behavior. In fact, if we don't address the mindset, we can't address the behavior for the most part. So when I'm talking to patients, a lot of times we uncover, what is that trauma that you face that you have to deal with? Who is that person that you need to forgive? If you can't move past that, you're still fighting an uphill battle. Some people are fatigued and drained because they're having a conflict with someone and they haven't resolved it, or they are in a toxic relationship that they need to get out of. So I'm like, let's talk about how to deal with that toxic person or that narcissist in addition to everything else we're doing, because I can sit here and tell you to exercise and eat right, but you're exhausted every day dealing with this toxic relationship. So I'm always addressing mental health. And it's one of my passions, because that's where I can see a whole ton of good. A simple shift in mindset with someone over the course of a visit, the person can come back and tell me, I'm doing so much better because I went and had that tough conversation, or I got into therapy for that issue that I had. And that's probably one of the most gratifying things, honestly, more gratifying than giving a pill and having someone come back and say, I felt better when I took the pill. The mindset is a huge piece. So, and like you were alluding to earlier, mental problems can be a symptom of an underlying physical problem. So you could have low testosterone and it causes depression. If the provider is just addressing the depression with an antidepressant and they don't find the hormone imbalance, they haven't found the problem. I had a patient just recently who I was concerned about bipolar disorder, and we were looking at that. But once we got the labs back, she had hyperthyroidism. So we have to address the thyroid problem. It was causing episodes of what looked like mania for her. So we addressed the thyroid problem. I haven't seen her back yet. We very might well address the mental problem as well. She may no longer have the mania. And if she does, we can address it. But had she gone to another provider, she may have simply been put on a medicine for mania and not looked at her thyroid hormone, because she was young. So a lot of people don't address hormones in young people. So I really think they're inextricable. When a provider is assessing a physical problem, they should always also be looking at the mindset, and vice versa. When they're addressing a mental health issue, they should be looking at the physical, because they're all interconnected.
Are you familiar with Dr. Nicole LePera?
No, I need to.
She goes by the Holistic Psychologist on Instagram. Her book, We Do the Work, came out a few years ago. A lot of the points that you just quoted from that are directly addressed in her book. But,
I'm definitely going to read it.
I heard her on Andy Frisella's podcast years ago, and I didn't have a huge grasp on how important mental health truly is, because everybody that doesn't realize it thinks, oh, okay, well, I'm fine. I don't have much to work through. I listened to her, started following her, and then started and read her book and realized that there were several things that I needed to address. So
I love that.
that's important. Another question.
Okay.
In a different direction, because I'm addressing some of the stuff that you said here. In my opinion, most medical professionals are not nutritionists.
That's true.
They have no idea how to eat healthy. They regurgitate the same thing that historically that they're told to say. And there's no polite way to put that.
No, that's true.
They do what they're told because they want to keep their job, because the insurance company says we need to do this. So, okay, you need to eat this diet. Well, this diet creates this medical problem and what have you.
Right.
So when you mention nutrition, so how do you approach that differently? Do you work with a nutritionist? Have you studied nutrition? How does that work?
That's a really good question. So you touch on so many things. So when I went through nursing school and nurse practitioner school, my training was based on the food pyramid, the old food pyramid. It was like, you need this many servings of cereal and pasta and bread and, vegetables somewhat, fruit somewhat. And then, it was not good training. And so I kind of went on my own personal journey I used to be about 15 pounds heavier than I am now. I kind of went on my own personal journey to figure out how I could eat better, because I was working out like a maniac. I wasn't seeing any weight loss. I wasn't eating right. I didn't know I wasn't eating right. I thought I was doing pretty good eating, a ham sandwich with Triscuits for lunch and Diet Dr. Pepper. So I read an amazing book called The Daniel Plan, which addressed nutrition through the aspects of mindset, community. It addressed health through all those things. So mindset, community, nutrition. So nutrition was a part of it, but it really talked about eating whole foods. So the modern obesity epidemic kind of started when processed convenient foods came out. I'm not a big conspiracy theorist either, but I am where it concerns food. There is an entire industry making, I don't know, I'm not a mathematician, billions, trillions of dollars, keeping us unhealthy and fat, eating processed crap and marketing it as health food, right? These are
Fake
reduced
food.
Yeah, it's reduced fat Ruffles. They're good for you. These are like gluten-free Skittles.
Fat-free sugar.
Oh my gosh. Right. The health and the food industry demonized fats for a while, and forget sugar. Don't look at that, but fat is the enemy. Let's put reduced fat, soda or whatever. So I did my own kind of personal study about nutrition. I did my own experimenting in my life. I found when I got off sugar and processed foods, my mindset was better. The mental fog was gone. I was sleeping better. I've had patients get off sugar and their pain went away, and they were having widespread pain, arthritis, fibromyalgia. I'm not saying everyone can cure those things with just cutting out sugar, but I'm saying it's a big step.
Sugar is an inflammatory.
It is.
It 100% is an inflammatory.
And we're talking about hormones. Sugar raises your insulin level. Insulin is a hormone. When insulin level stays high all the time, it jacks up all your other hormones. So, right off the bat, cutting out sugar. I'm just going on a tangent, but I did my own personal study about nutrition, and everybody's different. How everybody eats is different. How everybody loses weight is different. So I don't just prescribe the same diet for everyone. I ask the person, what do you eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? And then I look at their eating pattern and I see, where can we adjust? It doesn't do any good for me to tell you to eat cauliflower every day if you loathe cauliflower. So what do you eat? And some people are ready for the giant change and some people just aren't. So sometimes it's as simple as, I had a patient the other day and we were just working on, okay, instead of a public sub, let's go for a wrap. Let's start there, and let's add in a couple more fruits. And if you have to have, she was like, you don't understand, I have to have salt. I'm obsessed with salt. Okay, how about almonds instead of chips? Go for the whole food instead of the processed food everywhere that you can, and cut out diet sodas, for sure. Let's switch that for a tea that's half sweet, half unsweet, and that can make a big difference. Once people start feeling better, then they start making better choices. Some people come in to see me and they're just full of all kinds of self-loathing and blame. I've screwed up. I made all these bad choices. I don't know where to go. And it's like, you have an entire environment surrounding you that's setting you up for failure in a lot of cases. All the food company marketing and messaging, then the sedentary lifestyle coupled with now your hormones are all messed up. And you're blaming yourself when there's a whole system here. So let's address the changes that you need to make and recognize that you're not just the only person totally at fault and responsible. But I think you said it well in one of your recent podcasts. It's not about blame, it's about responsibility.
Yes.
Don't blame yourself. I had a patient in tears yesterday, just blaming herself for an hour. I had to stop her so many times. I'm like, blame is unhelpful. Let's focus on personal responsibility. You can take responsibility and make choices, but you're not totally to blame for everything that's going on with you right now.
People conflate blame and responsibility all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, all the time. And it was a very challenging subject with my children as they were growing up. It's like, well, you're blaming me for everything. I'm like, no, but it may not be your fault that your tire went flat when you were coming home, but you still have to take responsibility for it. You're not going to get home. And that's a different analogy, but it's ultimately the same thing. And when you take blame, it also, in my opinion, it lends itself to desperation. It lends itself to helplessness. Whenever you take responsibility, then no matter how small the step, you start feeling victories. And there's a lot of people out there that mentally have had not any victories in their life. They've done what they've been told for so long, and it's just not working.
Yes. I love this quote from this book, You Are a Badass, by, I'm trying to remember her last name. Her first name is Jen. Just an amazing author. She wrote, it's not your fault if you're fucked up. It's your fault if you stay fucked up. So you can recognize where you come from. Some people will just spend years in defeat saying, well, I had a really tough upbringing and this thing happened to me and that thing happened to me. and they're in this place of total defeat. And it's like, okay, that's your background. That's what happened to you. How can you take that and recognize your strengths and move forward from here? You don't have to live by that sad story. You can find that and find your way forward from that. You don't have to stay that way.
That's a great quote. And I've read You Are a Badass. It falls into my yellow book. Jen Sincero is the author, by the way.
Yes.
It falls into my yellow book philosophy is I don't do well with yellow books. It's a stupid philosophy. It's very silly. But I read like 3 of them in a row and I agreed with some of the stuff in them. And some of them I was like, oh yeah, that book was a waste of time. I did not think this one was a waste of time. Its message did not really resonate with me much.
Yeah.
It's more from the area that you're coming from. It's like, okay, if you're just starting on this journey, here's ways that you can cope and you can move forward and you can start to accept responsibility.
I'm just curious, do you like self-help books? Do you like books in the self-help realm?
I read constantly.
Do you like that type of genre?
I do.
Okay.
I like that genre. I read basically anything I get my hands on. Right now I'm reading 10X to 2X by Dan Sullivan. I'm reading the 365, The Daily Laws, 365 by Robert Greene. I read several books simultaneously. I consume that and not to get, I was one of these people that used to learn and never implement. I was like the career student and all that does is lead to frustration. I knew a lot of shit, but I didn't do anything with it. So recently I've changed the style of book I've read and I try and make it a point to take something away from those books every day and move forward. So I may read an entire book and get one point out of it. It was worth it to me.
Amen. That's really good.
It also helps me clear my mind in the morning. I sit down and read, drink my coffee and go from there. So
that's great.
Which is where I came across Dr. Nicole LePera. You mentioned another book on here that I'm going to get and read. And another question in relation to all of this, just building on this. And I loved the food pyramid, by the way, before I go on to the next question. My diet is the exact opposite of the food pyramid. Most conventional doctors would have a heart attack. I eat eggs and bacon almost every morning for breakfast. We'll eat typically a sandwich or a wrap for lunch. I don't eat a lot of carbs. I'm not a big bread guy. And either steak or chicken and a sweet potato for dinner. I mean, that's cooked with real butter, no seed oils. Des takes very good care of me and my nutrition. She cooks to my nutrition needs. But on paper, that's the exact opposite of the diet that you're supposed to eat.
But it's very little processed foods.
Almost everything is clean. Like I'll drink an energy drink, sometimes 2 in a day. Those are my cheats. Yep. And I don't drink the ones that have sugar in them. I drink the sugar-free ones. Because realistically, you have to have a plan that you're going to stick with.
Right.
And one thing that people try and do is, okay, well, I'm never eating dessert again. Well, you know what? I happen to love carrot cake.
Yeah, and you can have it.
I'm not going to go get a fake carrot cake because there's so much. If the ingredient has more than 3 syllables in it, I'm just going to assume that it's man-made. But I can have a piece of a carrot cake, even a smaller piece of a real carrot cake, and enjoy it. And then go on about my business. It doesn't really hurt anything as long as it's within my calories. You know what? Some days if it's over my calories, oh well. I enjoyed it and went on about my business. Tomorrow is not today.
I really love that. And I love also telling patients this analogy. I actually read it in the Daniel plan. And it's the analogy of following a GPS. When you're living a healthy lifestyle, you're eating, exercising, mindset, whatever you're doing, you're following a plan. It's a GPS. So your destination is here and your goal is, your destination's here and here's where you're starting. Your journey is going to kind of look like this, but you're still going to get to where you're going. If you are following a GPS and you take a wrong turn, the GPS reroutes you. Nobody follows the GPS, takes a wrong turn, and then finds himself in the wrong place and just gives up and turns off their ignition and says, I'm never going to where I'm going to. They say, okay, let me reroute. It's the same thing, but how many times do people do that with their diet and fitness? They mess up. They eat something they shouldn't eat, or they miss a day at the gym and they say, well, screw it. I'm a failure. I give up. I'm not doing this. No, don't do that. Like if you mess up or if you have something you shouldn't have, maybe it's not even a mess up. You had your carrot cake, you enjoyed it. That was great. Nothing wrong with that. The very next meal, the very next snack, you go right back into your healthy routine and you're still at your destination. You're still getting there. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think to myself, and I don't know if there's any actual science backing this particular number up, I just like it. If I follow my healthy exercise nutrition plan 85% of the time, I don't stress the 15. So that if I go to a party and have something, or if I miss a workout at the gym, I don't stress it. And for me, it's maintained my health for as long as it has. I mean, I'm 42 and I'm doing pretty well. So,
and that's you hit the nail right on the head. So many people are willing, because what they're doing is hard, especially when it comes to nutrition and fitness. It's easy to give up on it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I just want to fall back into that old habit. So my analogy, like similar to the one you just used with the GPS, is if I were to hand you $365 and you dropped a $10 bill, couldn't find it, you wouldn't throw the $355 in the trash.
Yes.
So if you mess up every once in a while, or you go on vacation, or you drink too much, you know what, screw, you ate the whole cake or whatever, it doesn't matter. You just get back on track the next day. 6 months down the road, you're probably not even going to remember that day that you messed up. Or if you do, you'll realize that it wasn't that big of a deal because you just kept going. You didn't give up and throw it. That's a very toddler response, to just throw everything down and try not to do it.
Yes.
Either a toddler or a brat teenager. So now the last piece of this is exercise.
Right.
How critical do you think, and what type of movements, how critical do you think movement is, and what type of movement do you think is the best?
That's a really good question. And I should say that I'm definitely not an exercise physiologist or anything like that. And I'm used to working with patients that don't have an extensive background in exercise. So I'm usually getting them to make baby steps. But I would say movement is absolutely essential to life. 100%. You cannot achieve goals as far as whether your goal is to relieve depression, whether your goal is to feel better and banish fatigue. I've had patients tell me all the time, I'm fatigued. You have to fix me. Like they're desperate. You've got to stop this fatigue, but I'm not exercising. Like, okay, you have to exercise. Exercise builds energy. I'm not saying it's the only cure, but we cannot resolve the fatigue without some exercise. So movement is essential to our bodies were made to move. What I like to prescribe, or what I like to recommend to my patients, is some combination of cardio and weight training, whatever that is. I often tell people it doesn't do me any good to prescribe a particular workout. Like, you're going to lift this weight, you're going to go to this gym. If they loathe weightlifting and they're not going to go to the gym, I try to ask them, all right, what do you enjoy? Well, I hate the treadmill and I'm really stressed about weights, but I love biking. I'm like, all right, well, get on that bike and just stand up and sit down on that bike, and you're building quad muscles and glute muscles, and then you can build from there. Or if they love dance, great. Find you a Zumba class. There's going to be some strength training in there. And I learned this in the annual plan also. The best physical exercise to recommend to someone is something they will do. So someone's like, they're just used to doctors being like, you got to go to the gym, and they hate the gym. Okay, but I love the pool. All right, so swim laps. Swimming is damn good exercise. So I try to find something the person really enjoys. If they're like, I got nothing I enjoy, then I'm like, we got YouTube. It's free. You can find all kinds of workouts on YouTube. Are they the very best workouts? Maybe not, but something is better than nothing. And I kind of look at it like two different things. One, someone can go through a negative spiral where they feel bad, so they make poor choices, and they feel worse, and they keep making worse choices, and they keep going down. Same thing, some people can climb right out of it. I look at it as like a positive staircase. You push yourself through some kind of workout. It wasn't the best, but it was something. Then you felt better. So then you made that better choice, and as far as food. And then your nutrition improved, so you felt even better. Then you made a good mindset choice. And then the next day you woke up feeling better and you made more choices. It's like you have a certain amount of money in your bank account and you earn some interest. Now you have more in your bank account. Even though that interest is this much or that change is this much, put a little bit more in and it keeps growing. There's a way to keep going with that. So it's a long-winded answer, but I generally look for, what does the person enjoy? How can I make that thing, whatever it is, a blend of cardio and strength training? I've had patients tell me they only do strength training and no cardio. Maybe that works for them. I think you need some cardio in there. But
you need to shut your mouth.
I know. I had a patient argue with me recently. I was like, some cardio. He's like, no, only weights. I'm like, all right.
I'm teasing, by the way. I meant no offense.
I don't get offended easily. We medical people, you really can't offend us. You can't shock us.
I do cardio when I do 75 hard.
Okay. Otherwise, you're all weight training?
Otherwise, I'm always weight, very little cardio.
Well, the weight training might be cardio for you, depending on what you're doing.
Mine is, I track mine pretty closely, and depending on how it is, I don't have an issue with that. I figure when I get out of breath going upstairs, I need to walk a little more.
Yeah. Or ruck, right? Put those like heavy ruck on and just walk it.
I've got a 30-pound weight vest that I use, mostly because I needed a bigger challenge walking through the stages of 75 hard, because I lost 30, 40 pounds. It wasn't as hard to walk around as it used to be. So I strapped it back on, and then my heart got to feeling it again.
There you go.
And you were very nice and very polite, and just the way you framed that as far as exercise goes. Listen, guys, one, if I'm gonna put this in, because now we're in my area of expertise at this point.
Oh, I want to hear it.
If you are able to walk to your car, you can exercise.
Amen.
If you're able to walk across the room, you can exercise. There are tons of people online that you can watch that have lost a ton of weight. And exercise doesn't have to be based on anybody else but yourself. The one influencer that comes to mind right now goes by Hulky Dad.
Oh, wow.
He's a big guy, decided to get in shape for his kids. He's not there by any means yet, but he's documenting every step of the process. So you lying to yourself and telling yourself you can't exercise, well, you should rephrase that and say, I won't exercise. Accept responsibility for your choice.
That's true.
Because let's say you're 100 pounds overweight. Well, you know what? If you get out of your chair and you choose for 5 minutes to walk around your living room in a circle, and you do that 2 or 3 times a day, there is no stigma. There is nobody making fun of you. And you know what? That counts because that's more than you did yesterday.
That's true.
So when it comes to baby steps, it comes to baby steps. And then just getting out and moving in general. And even the bodybuilder guys and the bigger guys in the gym, even the ones that don't do it, will tell you that walking is probably the single most important thing you can do for your health. And that doesn't matter whether you're a heavy weightlifter, whether you're overweight, or whether you're in shape. Because it helps in addition to the mental aspect of just walking, the physical aspect of walking. And walking burns, and I don't remember the scientific study for this, but walking burns primarily fat. It does not burn protein because of the way that it impacts your cardiovascular system. So just move. Start with movement. That also then helps with the mental benefits. And it's an easy way to get some wins and start stacking. And then I know Des hates this, but when you start stacking wins, because I overuse that term forever, but a lot of people need that positivity. They need that reinforcement in their life. And this is one of the easiest, simplest ways to get them. You can walk in circles in your house. You can walk around your driveway. It doesn't matter. So I've
had so many people tell me, you don't understand. I can't exercise because of my knee. I can't exercise because of my back. So they've just given up on exercise altogether. And just like what you're saying. And I'm like you said, if you can walk, can you do a little yoga? Can you hold a plank? Can you, that doesn't involve your knee at all. It protects your knee. I mean, it's just like, once I start bringing up ideas, a lot of people are just like, ugh. Like they like the idea that they could write off exercise. I'm like, you really can't.
It's that magic pill philosophy again.
Yeah.
I had a guy at one of the chamber events a couple of weeks ago come up to me and talk to me and ask me, and he goes, I wish I could be in shape. And he's my age. He goes, I wish I could be in the same shape that you're in. I'm like, well, okay, you can. He goes, well, if you were going to tell me one thing, what would it be? He goes, I've got some 30-pound dumbbells at home. They're kind of dusty, but I haven't used them. What do I need to do? Because I want my arms and chest to look better. I said, well, you don't need to touch the dumbbells. Just start doing push-ups.
Yeah.
How many should I do? As many as you can. And then do it again tomorrow and try and add one. And when you get to 50, then maybe start thinking about it. Ask me again when you get to that point.
Right.
So he said, well, that wasn't the answer I was expecting. I was like, well, you start somewhere. Everybody thinks it needs to be this. You know what? If you want to curl and move weights around, then go do it.
Yeah.
Whatever. I like that answer is whatever you're going to do. If you're going to enjoy it and stick with it, then go do it. Right. But if you have a specific goal in mind, it's like, if I want big legs, I'm not going to get there curling dumbbells.
Right.
If I want my overall appearance to look better, I'm not going to get there by, I don't know, what would it be? By doing planks. I'm going to have to walk. I'm going to have to incorporate some different things. So it depends on your goal. But if your goal is just to get movement, it does not matter what you do. Just go do something.
Right. And vary it up a little bit if you can. I mean, some people do the same thing over and over and over again and then wonder why they're not meeting some goals. It's like, well, you got to change it up too.
Unless you're lifting heavy weight, then you should probably stick with the same thing for a long
different
time.
Types of weights, right? Like you would just do the same bicep curl over and over. You got to lift your weights in different ways.
One thing we run into with guys that are weight training is they think every 2 weeks they need a whole new routine.
Oh, no.
Instead of sticking to something long term. It's like I record a lot of my videos, but you can't tell the difference between them because I can pretty much do the same exact thing every time I show up because I figured out what works and I like it. Now, it may not be the same exact exercise, but it's the same thing. So consistency is the most important. If you show up for your diet, if you show up for your health, if you show up for and by mental health is what I'm talking about, if you show up for your exercise and you do that consistently long enough, it's present in your mind and your body actually starts to alter.
Yes. And if you miss it, right? Once you get into that mindset and that habit and you're doing it every day and then you miss a day, you feel it. And you're like, boy, whereas before you didn't even, some people don't, and you know this, they don't know how good they could feel. Right? So they have no idea. So once they get into that, they're like, well, I feel really good. I had no idea I was feeling so bad. Then they miss it and it reinforces it because they're like, man, I missed the gym. I feel differently. I want to go back.
And that happens. I'm glad hotels have gyms.
Yeah, me too.
I don't always take advantage of them, but it's there when I need it. And there were this last trip to Orlando, it was that way. I was like, I woke up one morning, I'm like, man, my head's not in the right spot. I missed the gym. So I went down and I absolutely just blasted myself. And then went into Universal and went around the parks and was super excited. I did legs that morning because I walked 20,000 steps. but the point is it does things for you mentally because you know that you've done something for yourself.
Yes.
And another thing, and I don't know if this is true for women as much as it is for men, but I really feel like it could be. We spend, especially as we get older and our children start aging out and we start becoming, for lack of a better term, independent or autonomous again, it becomes a real challenge to do things for ourselves without an ulterior motive or without an outside reason. It's like, I need to get in shape or I need to feel better just because I need to feel better.
Right.
Do you see that in your practice? Or people using that as a reason not to, or you seen that across the board?
Yes, I see that in men and women, and especially women. So women and men are caregivers for sure. I mean, but women a lot of times become like the caregivers of children, and so they don't even understand the mindset of doing something for themselves. And I'll be honest, they use taking care of the kids as an excuse to not take care of themselves. I mean, I'm guilty of it myself. You know, if I focus completely on whatever the kids want and need, or what I feel like perceive they need, then I'm doing too much for them sometimes, and I'm not looking after myself. And what kind of example is that? But I've seen patients come to me absolutely depressed, overweight, miserable. And when I hear their story, it's one of taking care of everyone around them, whether it's an aging parent, whether it's children, whether it's a significant other, whether it's a man or a woman, they're caring for everybody else. And I have to draw them that picture. Like, if you are not taking care of yourself, you can't be there for everyone else. If you don't, you can't pour from an empty cup. If you don't fill yourself and take care of what you need, first of all, you can't give them the best version of yourself, which they need, is what you're saying. You're saying they need you. And second of all, you might just drop dead. And then what are they going to do?
Well, that went dark quick.
I know. And I don't believe in scaring patients, so I try not to say that, but that's lingering in the back of my mind. I mean, I have a patient I'm thinking of right now who is a brilliant businessman. And he was like, you don't understand. I have not been taking care of myself. I mean, his labs were atrocious. He's uncontrolled diabetic and older. And he was just like, well, I haven't had time to look after myself or eat right or anything because all these people in my business depend on me running this business. And I have children and a wife and all these things. And I had a good enough rapport with this guy because he was a friend before he was a patient. But I was like, what happens if you drop dead of a heart attack? He's a ticking time bomb. His blood pressure's out of control, blood sugar's out of control, overweight. I'm like, then what? You know? And he's like, you know what? You're right. I'm like, you have to take care of yourself first so that you can be there for the business and so that you can be there for the family. And it's amazing to me how interesting that paradox is. In America, we have this idea of independence and our autonomy, right? But we become backseat in our own life while we take care of everybody else's needs first. How does that happen? And we definitely need to shift that.
We have come to think that there is nobility in sacrifice, which there is, but we take that to the nth degree and to the extreme, and that's a problem. By the way, I'd very much like to meet that friend of yours.
Oh, okay. I'll introduce you if he's comfortable.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. No, that would, that sounds like exactly the kind of guy that I would get along with. I like what you said, where you can't pour from an empty cup. I've used that specific. That was a real struggle for me as far as my children were aging out of the house, and we have to deal with the fact that sometimes our children don't make the best decisions and they don't necessarily follow their raising and they don't live the life that we think they should live. And I really struggled as a guy with my sense of purpose and feeling kind of like a failure. And then, okay, what am I going to do now? And not realizing it was tied to this other stuff that was going on, but I was dealing with all of this at the same time, in addition to some other chronic illnesses, which I've documented. Coming from that perspective, it was very difficult for me to go to a doctor and seek a medical solution because, again, noble sacrifice.
Yeah.
I should be able to figure this out on my own. I can't believe I'm struggling with this. What am I doing? So when I first started exploring it, I felt a little better because the doc helped with a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I'm making a point here and to a question, but there are ranges to help that that can be given medically, mentally, and physically. I mean, I didn't start out lifting in the gym the way I lift right now. I didn't start out with my supplement regimen, vitamin regimen that I have now. And I didn't start out with my medication regimen that I have now. And not every doctor that I started with, it's not the ones that I ended up with, because not all of them will share your philosophy.
Yes.
My challenge was, as I came, all the documentation that you liked, I came to the doctor with that. Workout logs, food logs, sleep logs, all of that. I wanted them to look at that
Do you know how rare
information.
that is? That is a
I've
dream for a doctor.
I've been told that. I track everything. And when I went, even my most recent doctor, I took all of that information in there. He handled it a little differently, because he said, well, he goes, you obviously tracked all of this stuff. You know where you are. He goes, I don't have time to look at all that right now, but I am going, because of your level of detail, I'm going to agree with your request, and did what I wanted him to do at that point. So that helped. Would I have preferred that he look at all that and take it into account? Yes. But at the same time, it was one of those 15, 18 minute, I think I was in there for less than 10, but still.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you for your advice on, and to give the viewers advice when they go, specifically guys, how would you encourage them or give them some comfort level to go and seek this help from a medical professional? Now, if they're local, I'm going to encourage you guys to go and see Erica. If you're not, then I'm going to encourage you to do some research and find a doctor that has your best interest at heart. A hormone doctor in general is going to help. But again, what would you recommend to help them bring with them and to help them overcome that stigma of, well, I'm a guy, I shouldn't need this kind of help?
Okay, those are good questions. So as far as overcoming the stigma, I would encourage that, like we said before, a good doctor, and I believe the majority of us are good. You know, I'm sure like any profession, you got good ones and bad ones, and you got to seek out a good one. But a good professional is not judging you. So number one, we're not judging you. Number two, we've heard whatever it is you're going to say. You know, I mean, I've had so many people like they're so afraid to tell me this thing, and I can see them working themselves up, and finally they tell me, they're like, "You're never going to believe this. I drink too much." I'm like, "I've heard that 3 times today, and I can help you." I'm not judging you. Like, I mean,
how much is too much?
It's so hard to answer. I mean, it's very individual.
Answer that when you're done. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's probably 1 drink a day for women and 2 drinks a day for men is like what we're supposed to get. I'd say if it's like every day and you can't put it down, it's probably too much. If you tried to quit and you had a really hard time quitting, it's probably too much. But it's individual. But so know that we've heard it before. Know that we're not judging you, and we can't fix what we can't see. We can't help what you don't tell us. So when I've had the sad occasion that someone came into the exam room, I could see they were holding on to something that they didn't want to share, and I kept trying to get it out of them, and they left without sharing it. And if they don't share it with me, I typically can't help it. Know that. Be willing to work with a provider. I think that wants that collaborative model. I don't think the authoritative model works very well. I've had patients come in and tell me, "I want you to yell at me, and I want you to tell me what to do." And I mean, there might be a type that really wants that. Like you were saying, you kind of wanted your doctor to give it to you straight. And I mean, I don't
want
think
him to yell at me, but I did want him to tell me the truth.
Some people kind of like, I don't know. They're like, "I think if you yell at me, it'll really help me." I'm like, I don't think that would work. And I'm not that type. So you haven't found the right person for that. So find a good provider, maybe that friends and family have recommended. They have good reviews on being collaborative and being holistic. That term holistic gets bantered around a lot, but basically means looking at the entire picture. If they're just looking at one aspect of the picture, that's probably not going to be the one you want to go for. Somebody that's willing to address hormones is really important. Hormones are essential to everyone. So if there's a provider that just does not believe in hormones, looking at hormones and dealing with them, probably not your person if you're having fatigue, anxiety, or weight gain, which most people are. And come to them with information. Most importantly, what are you eating? Tell the truth. We're not judging, but we need to know where we're starting from. What are you getting as far as physical activity? A lot of people don't want to tell me the truth about that. Just tell me, and then I can tell you where to go from there. And if you can take any metrics like blood pressure, blood sugar, if you have diabetes, any numbers that you can get and bring to us, that's really helpful. And then don't be afraid to talk about sex, desire, those things people get embarrassed about. And I understand that. I'm a human being too. But providers are not going to be shocked. They're not going to be embarrassed. They're not going to be upset. We're used to talking about those things. We're taught to talk about them. We're not uncomfortable talking about them, whether it's a male or a female. So sometimes males come to me and they're a little embarrassed or shy to talk to me about sexual function or desire, but I need to know that to help them with their hormones. And it's not offending me. It's not upsetting me. It's an important part of your life, and it's okay to talk about it. And it doesn't mean that something's terribly wrong with you. It may be a simple issue that we can fix: stress relief, hormone replacement therapy. Some men need medications where it involves function after we optimize everything else just because of various health reasons, those kinds of things. So gather all the data that you can, especially fitness and nutrition data and lifestyle data, however many drinks. They teach us in medical training to whatever the patient says they drink, add to. Just tell us the actual number. It's okay. I'm not mad. If someone's like, look, I drink 6 liquor drinks a night, I'm going to tell you the truth. I love hearing the truth. And I'm like, all right, I'm not judging you. Let's talk about how we can work on that. And don't be afraid to talk about whatever it is you think you're worried about, because just know that we're not judging you and we're just here to help.
That's a good answer. Guys, get out of your own way.
Yeah.
That's the best thing I could tell you. If you're going to go to the doctor, if you're feeling like shit, you're feeling emotional, and I don't mean, okay, you're going to hug your kids and you're going to hug your grandkids and you're going to get a little emotional because they're there. That's not what I'm talking about. That's a good thing. But where you're not, instead of attacking your problems, you're wanting to sit down and cry about it, or you're worried about it, or you're not actually dealing with it. Well, you know what? Go and see a doctor and tell them how you're really feeling.
Yes.
If you're having issues at home, specifically physical ones with sex or what have you, if you got an issue talking to the doctor about it, take your spouse with you. Take them into the room with you.
Absolutely.
And the number one other thing is make a list.
Yes.
Because as soon as a person that can answer your questions shows up, you forget 80, 90% of your question. I actually told you that before the podcast.
Yes, that's true.
So it's like, make a list of what you want to talk about, make a list of what you want to know, and make a list of what your concerns are. And the more honest you are, and you know what, guys, this is very personal. It was not easy for me to admit the fact that there were weeks where I'd have 50 or 60 drinks. That's a lot. And it wasn't every week, and I didn't have a problem walking away from it, but I looked at it from a purely caloric standpoint. I'm like, I don't need to be drinking that much. Good God, that's an extra 6,000 calories a week. So from a caloric standpoint, it wasn't healthy in any way. I wasn't trying to conflate that at all, but it's not easy to be that honest. But when you are that honest, a lot of times when you just start writing this stuff down, you're going to see your own problems, and you don't need to take them to the doctor. You may tell them, hey, I'm already working on this.
Yeah.
But the very act of putting that stuff in paper and bringing it up is important. Guys, we don't like to do that. We don't like to have to ask for help. But my personal story, when I first got and realized I needed TRT, was exactly your scenario. I was depressed. I was acting like a little bitch. And if anybody's ever met Des or heard her on the podcast, and it was bad.
Oh, man.
So I was like, okay, this sucks. Now she's mad at me. Everybody's mad at me. This is terrible. I got to the doctor, did the test. My testosterone levels were in the single and double digits.
I never see it that low.
And that's what my doctor said at that time, because I've never seen this happen. And we didn't explore why at the time, and we still haven't. But for whatever reason, production just shut down. And he put me on the minimum, because there's a range, 300 to 1,000, 1,200, whatever it is, of free testosterone. He got me to 300, and that was as high as his practice would legally allow him to go. Not legally, but would allow him to go.
So low.
So I felt a little better. I was like, okay, I'm getting here. Well, after about 6-8 months, I told Daz, I'm like, this just isn't working. I'm starting to feel the same way I was before. Ended up switching doctors, working out, starting to lose weight, just doing everything I could holistically to get there. Went to another doctor. He took one look at my labs and goes, well, I'm going to double the amount just to start and see if we can get you there. He goes, technically you're on the range, but based on your history, you should be 3 times what you're at right now.
Yes.
And after that, life started changing. And this is a question for you, but I'm going to state what I believe. And then if I'm wrong, I want you to correct me, because what you don't understand, folks, and this is true for women and for men, whenever you go in there and you start getting your hormones and everything else in line, once you start addressing those, this is not, oh, you're going to feel better 6 months from now. This is, I started feeling better within a couple days. I mean, it starts having effect on you mentally and physically almost immediately. Would you find that correct?
That's pretty accurate. I would say people are very different. I mean, like I'll just take a little bit easier example that most people can understand, maybe depression medication. Some people by day 1, I mean, they start feeling 100%, and some people take a few weeks. So I think that's probably true for hormones as well. It depends on how bad it was to start and how good the correcting is, for sure. So someone who's like, for example, a woman who's just starting menopause, maybe she needs a little bit of estrogen and we're getting it up, gradually. It might take a little bit more time. But for the most part, yeah, hormone replacement therapy, if it's desperately needed and initiated at the right dose, is life-changing pretty quick. Same thing with vitamin levels. So that's kind of why, I don't know if I mentioned it before, why I called my business Optimize Life, is because I was taught to practice this way that your provider was taught to practice, that there's a normal range Those lab ranges are reference ranges. They're based on the average American population, the, bottom to the top. And the way we're taught and not even the top, the chunk in the middle of the average. So the way that we're taught in medical training is to just get somebody somewhere in that normal range. Your blood pressure, your vitamin level, your hormone level, just somewhere in there. Okay, you're normal, move on. I want them optimized. Like, what is the optimal testosterone level for most men? Should be like up around 800 to 900, sometimes 1,000, depending on the age range. And it's individualized, but that's like a generality there. Vitamin B12, the higher the better. There's no overdosing on B12. And some people feel great at 600, but could feel better at 800 for that level. Vitamin D is another one. So there's so many places in medicine we could optimize. And the traditional model is under so much time pressure to just be like, well, it's normal, and insurance pressure, right? So insurance companies often won't cover testosterone therapy unless you can show a lab that shows it's less than 300. Well, that's like severely abnormal. But testosterone as a substance is not expensive. So guys, like if you need testosterone and your provider is afraid that it's not going to be covered by your insurance, pay cash for it. It's going to be less than $100 for 2 to 3 months supply in general. Varies based on the pharmacy, but you don't have to go through insurance to get it. That's another big common misconception amongst providers and patients. So a lot of treatments are like that. They're not exorbitantly expensive. And how much is it worth to you? Years of your health or quality of life also. That's another thing I guess we hadn't really touched on much, and you probably share this philosophy. Health is wealth. There's nothing more important, I think, at least to my mind, than my health, because you can have all the money in the world, and if you're miserable, what's it for? So taking the time and money to spend on whoever you need to see, whether it's a provider, that'd be awesome, or also you need to see that personal trainer, if you need to see a nutritionist, whoever it is, a mental health therapist, to get your health in order. Everything else will follow, in my opinion. But if you prioritize everything else and deprioritize that, then you're just fighting an uphill battle.
I completely agree. And that philosophy is true. And we didn't really touch base on supplements too much. I talk about supplementation a lot.
You probably know more than me about that, actually.
And I maybe, I don't know. I don't know how much you know, but I know I can tell you I know a lot about it, mostly because of my training through First Form and just learning and experimenting over the years what works and what doesn't. That was a great statement. We have touched base on a ton of stuff today. Is there anything that you want to leave them with, you want to leave the audience with, any final statement you want to add?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm just encouraging everyone to look at health differently. I love the idea of like personal responsibility. We've been talking about that. A lot of people, and this isn't everybody, but a lot of people will take their health and wellness and just put it in someone else's hands. I'm going to go to my doctor once a year, check some check boxes, and guess what? I'm fine. Your health is your own responsibility. The provider that you see, whatever they are, whether they're a physician, nurse practitioner, nutritionist, exercise physiologist, whoever you're seeing is there to guide you. But ultimately, that responsibility is yours. And that's an exciting concept because that puts you in the driver's seat. You are in control of your health, your wellness. You find the right provider, you get your questions answered. If you're not being heard by your provider, if your issues are not being addressed, find another provider. Do not just give up. And make sure whatever provider you find is looking at your hormones, especially if you are having symptoms like fatigue, mood disorders, whether it's anxiety, depression, weight issues. It's almost impossible to address weight without at least looking at hormones. The hormones are optimized and you're still overweight. Okay, we can work with that. But if it doesn't do a lot of good to prescribe a lot of fitness, exercise, and nutrition without addressing that hormonal imbalance. And know your numbers, know your labs. If your provider is saying they won't order certain labs, either find a provider, consider paying out of pocket for the labs that you need to get done, and just make sure that you keep seeking out that knowledge, just like Flint, like you're saying, reading up on it, learning about it. Patients often are afraid to tell me, oh, well, I researched this. No, that's a good thing. Knowledge is power. And yeah, just make sure that you know everything you can about whatever it is you're dealing with and have a provider that's willing to work with you on that.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you, Erica, for being with us today. This is an amazing amount of information. I think this is going to do a lot of good. Guys, appreciate you tuning in. If you stayed here this long, you will find her contact information in the description for this episode of the podcast. I encourage you to reach out. If you guys have any questions, throw them in the comments. We'll definitely get them answered. As always, please come back, share this with people that you think will need it and you think it'll benefit from it. That's what keeps us going. Love y'all. Peace.